Most people stop when the odds are 99% against them. The guests on this show are the ones who think, but that 1%. So you're basically traveling the world, challenging the traditional educational systems.
Oh yeah. I'm more like, I myself am a systems person. Like, I love structuring systems and, making things work in that sense. So I also am with background law professional, and I understand policy. So like when I say systems, I want to make sure they work within the reality, because but at the same time be like future oriented in terms of like what makes sense for the learner and what is future proof, but how we can make it work in the very bureaucratic reality that the countries are in, because all of the countries are bureaucracies in a way. Like, you can't avoid that, but how do you make it work in that reality? And it's a fun game to play.
Well, now certain small countries have been strengthened by becoming innovation hubs.
Yeah, that's what we are doing. Yeah.
So what exactly are you doing? Tell me about your organization.
So Fast Foundation, we existed for 8 years now. And the idea and big ambition is to make Armenia an innovation hub and AI hub. And obviously you can have many interpretations of what that means. Like, what does it mean to be a tech hub? But one of the things that we're heavily focusing on is how do we make sure that we create top-level AI talent, top-level technology talent for innovation to happen in the country, because you need the talent and you need the network, and then you need the exposure for innovation to happen. So we have businesses, but we have some startups, but we don't really have too many startups coming out. And that's because we don't have the right talent and we don't enable them in the right way. Those companies that did really, truly remarkable startups are those who studied here or who lived here. And then for various reasons, then they decided to either move to Armenia or do the back offices in Armenia. It's like, what do we do to make this like rather than an exception, but a norm? Like, what type of enablement we have to give to people? Like,
so how do you go about actually creating a structure that nurtures that?
Yeah. So originally, like, we tested a ton of things, boot camps, fellowship programs, incubation programs, research grants. And then in the end of the day, because I'm a systems person, we were trying to find the root causes. Why isn't it scalable? Because, okay, we find 10 brilliant people, and then we want to find another 10, and there is none. Like, but it's not, we don't have really only 10 people, right? Something is wrong. So, these people were enabled and those weren't. Why? And we started to go back to the root cause, and one of the root causes was access to good education, because most of those really, really smart kids were coming from 3-4 schools. And at least half of them were private schools, which means they were unaffordable. And all of them were in Yerevan except for one, maybe. So we were like, okay, access to good education is a big bottleneck for these kids to be able to become the potential future CEOs of Crisps or Service Titans and, those types of companies. They just didn't have a chance.
So what is good education? What do you consider good education and brilliant people? How do you recognize that? How do you measure that?
Yeah, cool. A good question. So we decided to basically do like a proof of concept on one value chain. We said, okay, we can't do all STEM fields. We can't do the entire country as one NGO. What if we try to prove that it's possible to do private school level education in a public school? Specifically in math and AI. So we started high school program, the Generation AI program, and it's doing 3 things, 3 subjects we have. Mathematics, like calculus, statistics, really high-end mathematics. Then we teach them computer science, specific language like Python, and then we start teaching them AI based on that. But it's a very scientific foundational approach in a sense that we don't teach them what ChatGPT is. We teach them how you create a ChatGPT. That's why they have to understand the math. That's why it's quite, demanding academic program. But at the same time, it has a lot of active learning. Like, we try to make it interesting, practical. Math doesn't have to be only the equations you solve. It has to be like, okay, this is how you can use math to solve a problem in your society. Okay, go find a problem in your society that you are interested in, and then let's try to figure out how we can try to solve it with math. And it's so interesting to see how differently kids started to think because of that. So they learn really complicated math, but it's also very clear to them how they can use their theoretical math knowledge in real life.
And I could have used that several years ago.
Yeah, see?
Yeah.
See, I would love to study with this program too. I did calculus back in the school, and I, in a way, loved it, but then I was trying to understand, okay, so what do I do with this in life? And no one could answer to that question to me.
Where do you apply it?
And that's exactly what we try to do for these kids. It's like, yeah, and one important thing is like we do want them to be creative, entrepreneurial. We want them to better understand their own strength and to also know that the systems are not rigid. It's like fluid. You can create any type of a success model that you want to, but here are the people who are the current leaders of the industry, or here are the known paths today. That doesn't mean tomorrow there wouldn't be another one. So we don't want anarchists, but we do also want people like youth that has the breadth of the view to be able to shape their own future, because oftentimes like parents obviously influence a lot the decision making that the teenagers do, and they don't know, like how would they know where the AI industry is, right, to be able to help the kids. So they would just do whatever they think is safer for them, and stuff like that. So that's why we also give a lot of exposure to tech people, to scientists, to people from Armenia, to people from abroad, so that these kids meet a lot of different people and they understand that success can have a lot of different colors, shapes, and forms and sectors, and that helps them dream bigger and know that it's not just one neighbor's son that went to Yerevan and did whatever is the only sort of success path that they can have. It's important for them to have the width.
So why was this formed in the first place? This was, you said, about 8 years ago?
So FAST Foundation?
FAST, yeah.
So FAST was created 8 years ago by Nubar Afeyan, Ruben Vartanyan, and Artur Alaverdian, some of whom I'm sure the Armenian audience would know, but they are a businessman and philanthropist, and they have done many things in Armenia for many years. And technology was one of the sectors that they realized in time could be a game changer in terms of economic prosperity of the country and also national security in a way as well. Because if you are economically relevant and if you produce technology that is relevant for the world, then you're needed in the global politics for something else than just, geopolitical leverage, which unfortunately Armenia has been historically for many, many years. And that's why I think it was 2017 that formally the entity was created. And 2016 4-day war was sort of also a trigger for the founders to think that we need to be much more prepared for what's going to come. Unfortunately, I think in that sense, no one really realized how much preparation the country has to do. But the idea is that we need to be globally relevant. And for that, we need to speak the language of the world. And the language of the world is definitely technology and business. And so we want to make sure that it's realistic to talk about globally competitive technology in Armenia and that it is scalable. I think scalability is one of the big reasons we wanted also to do some of these things, because there was a lot already going on. MNC's big multinational corporations were in Armenia already. Some startup ecosystem movement has started. Some people who worked already in the big companies started to shape their own companies. There was a lot of dynamics. But then the next level would be the challenge: how do we make sure this is not an exception, but rather, part of our ecosystem?
Let's walk the viewers through this from like A to Z in layman's terms so that everyone can really understand exactly what it is. So this was founded 8 years ago. What were the initial steps that were taken? How are you actually creating a system?
Yeah, I think initially we did a lot of research in terms of where the world is, what are the biggest gaps and opportunities, what type of assets Armenia as a small country has, because we were trying to also be quite realistic about what it will take to be globally competitive. It shouldn't be just cute, you know. It should have been something that in the shark world could be relevant.
And what did you feel were some of those assets?
Some of those assets were definitely the talent, and then obviously because we already had some saturation in the field of software engineering, basically, and it didn't really require a lot of infrastructure, because that's also a problem. Like, for example, it's very hard to build a biotech capacity in Armenia because the amount of lab work and procurement and materials and like other stuff that goes into it is so big and so expensive.
Sorry, you said to build what?
Biotechnologies.
Okay.
Like, it's a very expensive niche to go into. Even if we would say, okay, we have people like Nubar, who is big in biotech globally, and we have, let's say, enough biologists in Armenia, it's still not enough, because what it takes in terms of infrastructure, in terms of other things that go into it, is just really, really very expensive. And we were decades behind, but software engineering was something that we were already succeeding. We had some talent. We did have the internet bandwidth connectivity. It didn't require too much sort of infrastructure investment, let's put it that way. It just needed to be scaled. It needed to have high quality, and it had to come out from this what I call boutique level to a bit more like expansion.
So when you say scaling, how do you measure that? How exactly are you scaling?
So we, as a foundation, obviously are not doing much business development, although we did try to do originally a lot of enablement of business. So basically, startup initiation, like what do we do to help entrepreneurs give it a start, because we have many big companies, and obviously the bigger corporations are only growing bigger. How do you make sure you create like artificially in a way space for the younger entrepreneurs to start their business? This is what we originally did, quite some, and we did maybe train around 700 aspiring entrepreneurs. We created Angels Network that started to give the initial investments to the startups, etc. But then a couple of years in, we noticed that the pipeline of talent coming in is shrinking, like it's smaller. The less and less people are in general coming into the space, and there are many reasons for that, but that's where like the scalability became a problem. We basically had a lot of investors who are ready to invest, but then we had fewer teams coming up. And it wasn't because we didn't have enough smart people in the country. It's because the sort of environment wasn't there. There were many primary steps that had to be taken that weren't in place. And so,
like what?
Like, for example, the academic environment was very, very rigid and outdated. Like, so the university education basically they would get was really outdated, while the business was like, we need professionals right now. So many people started to do boot camps and to go right away into the business. And once you are in business, and you, especially in a country like Armenia, where income is important because you have the socioeconomical challenges. So if you have a secure job with good salary, you wouldn't risk that for entrepreneurship. So if you have secured already your work in a cool tech company, you have really good salary, you are a young professional, you have, I don't know, married recently, you have a child, you have a mortgage, you know, all of that. So you need the stability, right?
Yeah,
so
here as
why
well.
would you? Exactly. Exactly. So why would you risk that for some sort of a potential startup idea that you have? Especially given that the overall like smallness of our market doesn't really allow, it's not like Bay Area, right, where everyone is like, it's cool to do a startup. It's more less risk, please, you know, why would you risk it if you know, and it's all understandable. In smaller markets, that's how things work. So we decided that there are two big things that we have to do in terms of systems. One is to understand what would it take to enable the young professionals soon enough for them at least to have exposure to the choices, for them to know what it means, for example, to do an academic career, what it means to be a really top professional in the industry, rather than aspire for a junior position, and then what it means to be a founder. Like when you say startup, it sort of sounds cool, but it actually comes with a lot of risk and responsibility. Yeah, so you have to really understand.
And isn't there like a super high stat of how many of them fail?
Oh yeah, of course, exactly. So and they have to know that this comes with the risk. Obviously, some people are born with a bit of adventurous mind, but it's not about adventurous. Those are like demystifying a little bit what it means to choose each of these paths and who are the real entrepreneurs, what it takes, and all of that. So we were thinking maybe we should do something in university. And then we realized by doing a couple of programs, it's just too late. We need to start earlier. So we said, okay, let's take AI, because we know software engineering, AI, and we saw that Armenia has potential in AI in 2017 when we were created, when we did some of this research, like where can Armenia really try to compete? And this was emerging. It was before ChatGPT. It was emerging, and it was visible that things are coming. So we said, okay, let's bet on this as like one area. We try to see what's the maximum we can do for Armenia. And that's what we started to do. We created this Generation AI program in an attempt to create like an entire learning journey. So if you are, for example, a young, smart woman, and you would want to become a professional in this field, what do we do to support you on this journey? So what are the important things? And how we also protect you, in a sense, from the unknowns of the future. So like no one really knows. Like there's so many projections of how many jobs will come and go, and it's all projections. Usually none of these projections actually become true. But definitely there's volatility. We knew that. So we said, okay, mathematics is something that will always be relevant, and whatever technology we're talking about, mathematics is the language of technology. So the better math the kids know, the more resilient we'll be. And at best, if they they would be shaping it, at worst they will be the first adopters to the change. So okay, so we enable them by giving them really good math, improving the quality of math, and giving access to as many kids as possible to really good math education. Second, okay, for knowing AI, you need computer science, and back in the days, particularly Python language. So we started to teach them the Python language, and then the machine learning itself. And then we tried to understand what are other things that you have to give to make sure that they don't really become the slaves of the tech companies, if I can put it that way, to make it a bit more to exaggerate the problem a little more. But how do we make sure that these are the thinkers, these are the creators? Because one of the things that we know, a small country like Armenia can never compete in quantities. We can never become India, we can't become Poland, and not even Ireland in terms of, amount of talent we can give to the big techs, right? But we can definitely become a hub that gives really high quality people in volume. So we can give enough or disproportionately more really talented people, which means, so if we, for example, could educate 1,000 top AI engineers instead of 10, that would be a game changer for the economy. And this is something that is feasible in Armenia. So, okay, what is it that we have to teach to a teenager for them to have that mindset and drive and empowerment to become that, instead of just go after a job? And there's nothing bad, obviously, about working in technology. I'm not trying to bring negative thing to it, but what I'm saying, if they have the potential to become the leaders in the sectors, what is that we do for them to have a chance to do it, right? So that's why we also do a lot of things for them in terms of competitions. We create career guidance opportunities for them. So we take the tech people to them, we bring them to the tech companies for them to be exposed to many things. We enable a lot of project-based learning for them. So instead of just learning math, They have to go find a problem in their society that they want to solve with math or AI. And then they have to come up with a project. They have to work together. They have to go do surveys with the community. So we try to build the mindset and skill set that you will need, that it would take for you not to be just tech savvy, to be a really good professional as technology person, but also to be a problem solver, an innovator, an engineer, a researcher, an entrepreneur, which is a big competitive advantage. And I have to say, it's interesting to see how much potential they have if you create an environment for them to have that sort of creativity come out, because usually when they come, they're like so shy and they're like and then now you should come and see. We're going to have the first cohorts of graduates this year. They talk, they present, they have ideas. It's just everywhere. Even the shyest kids have opened up in a very, very beautiful way.
What do you think are some of the most important components in that environment that you've created for them?
Yeah, I think if I would put it very simply, is providing space to fail, or even creating triggering situations where they have to fail.
So give me an example, like what's something that they do?
Yeah, for example, if they would learn, I don't know, we have one team that I particularly loved. So they were learning in mathematics functions, which could be something like quite boring. If you would think from the perspective of just doing equations, etc., etc. But they were challenged to try to find problems that they could solve through their knowledge of functions. So there was this one group in Echmiadzin, Varshapat, which is one of the cities in Armenia. And I think one of their relatives or grandmothers had diabetes. So they knew what hypoglycemia is, which means basically when you don't take your drug, sugar management drug on time, then you can have negative reaction, and then you have to have a special injection. So most likely those teenagers were exposed to real life cases that they saw that triggered them, and they were trying to find a solution to it, as if you could schedule and predict what is the time that there is a risk you could potentially have that, and you would take the drug on time, then their relative wouldn't have it. So they went to local hospital, to doctors, and they started to survey them, like, what is the time you take it, what is the dosage, how can we predict it, and they told them, these are like 16 years old, to the doctors in the region, we're gonna try to calculate it with mathematics. And obviously the doctors were like, kids, go do your mathematics. You're not going to solve this problem. Then they did some surveys of patients, etc., etc. And basically they came up with a calculation of what are the potential risk zones, how many hours, if you miss taking the drug, what is your risk level based on the functions that you might get a hypoglycemia. And they calculated suggested time frames on when and how, what dosage of drug you have to take to be able to avoid it. And they took this back. The beautiful part of it is that they took this back to the doctors, and they showed it to the doctors, and they were really shocked. They were like, oh, wow, you're almost right in terms of what you should have gotten if you were a doctor, basically. And they were really surprised that through math, basically, these kids could have come up with a problem and tried to calculate the dosage and the timing. That is something that could be done in the medical field. And the idea is that, they figure out what are some real life problems that you can solve with their, even limited knowledge of mathematics. It was really very motivating for them as well to see that they almost got it right in real life based on what doctors who were really skeptical about what they were doing in the end. And it's giving that sort of empowering idea to them that they can solve these problems, and no one's stopped them from going and surveying people. No one assumed they would, but also, that the fact that you have that space and you're even encouraged to do something out of the school, to go be creative, you're like, yeah, of course, sure, go ahead and try it, is something that oftentimes teenagers lack in school systems because it's so rigid. No, you have to do this and that and that. So if you say, why not? they do the rest. You don't really need to tell them what to do. They just need to know that they can do something beyond the square they are put in.
Before we continue, let's take a quick moment to chat with this episode's sponsor, personal injury attorney and founder of A&Law, Law, Anino Bondian. Congratulations on earning your title as super lawyer.
Thank you.
Personal injury is such a competitive field. Do you feel like you have to also work on visibility and self-marketing?
Absolutely. I feel like it's a saturated field.
What's one thing people say after a car accident that can completely ruin their case?
I'm so sorry.
So why?
That could be used against you. When you say things like that, the person on the other side is going to run to the insurance company, and that's the first thing that they're going to say. And that can be used against you.
Make sure to visit anlaw.law for more info. That's anlaw.law. So this system, is it a few hours in a high school day of the schools, or how is it incorporated into the high schools?
It's quite a lot of hours actually during the high school. It's almost half of their high school academic hours. So basically half of their time per week they spend with these 3 subjects as part of their curricula. It's like in America you would have elective courses you would choose. This is like honors and AP level mathematics and computer science, basically, if I would put it in an analog. And what we are also trying to do is, because it's an honors level program, obviously this is not for everyone. It's not an elite program either, so it's very in the entry level. We don't really want them to be the top math students. We say if you have enough math and if you're motivated, you can come in. But in the end of the 10th grade, you will have an exam, and if you don't perform, it's a merit-based program, you can't continue. But we see that during this 1 year, they have transformative knowledge leap because of the enablement, and because it's not an elite program. Like, it's not, you're either the top 1% or you're out. It's vice versa. Like, if you are motivated enough, we'll do everything possible for you to be able to absorb this. And it's really interesting to see that transformation in them. But one of the things that we also know is this is not a program we can put in every school in Armenia in terms of system, because we want to be able to sustain the quality if we spread it out too much in terms of the quantity.
Is it because of the teachers, or?
It's because of the teachers and infrastructure.
Okay.
And also some external work that we do, like additional opportunities we create for the students. But what we decided to do to make sure that no kid sort of is left out of the system, we very deliberately with the ministry chose the locations of the schools. And so we have now 23 schools, which gives geographic access to around 75% of high schoolers in the country. And next year we will be almost doubling the amount of schools, which basically means that the majority of high schoolers have physical access to the school. So let's say it's in one city, which might have X amount of high schoolers. There's one school that if they want to, they can choose. It's like a magnet school type of a thing. You can basically choose that school and do your honors program there, and no one will be left out of the program if they qualify, which is an easier way to build a scalable system, basically, because for us it was important that this is scalable, but the quality is not diminished, and it's cost efficient as well, because we wanted to be able to sustain in the system, because we do this with ministry. So this is in public schools, which means that the public school system has to be able to work with this in long run.
So what are some of the accomplishments where you feel reinforced that this is the right system for education?
Yeah. When we were starting, basically the idea was, how do we bring private school level education to public school system in a developing country, right? So many layers of problems in that sentence. We didn't know if we will succeed or not, so we tried to also collect a ton of data on how our program does, how it compares to the peer students in the country. So we do a lot of benchmarks to see, does this really work? And we also compare it to the world as well. One of the important validations, I would say, that came through the second year of the program was that so UNESCO has this AI educational framework that they have developed together with the big tech like the Google, Code.org, IBM, MITs, UCLs. They were all involved in the creation of this framework. And basically this is the recommendation on what a school system could do if they wanted to educate the AI creator. So basically what we do. And then when they looked at what we are doing, they made us a case study basically for other ministries to learn from. So this September, we were in Paris presenting to 15 other ministries globally, including UK, UAE, like countries that are actually leading AI technology and education globally, to learn from the way we actually made this AI education reform in Armenia, because it's that sort of ambitious in terms of what we do. So we do a lot of benchmarks internationally, and then now it has started to bring the external world validation. So this year we presented Armenia's case in more than 3-4 UNESCO conferences in different regions, Latin America, Asia, Europe, etc. The other thing that was a big moment of pride this summer, our kids from Vanadzor, for the first time, they went to AI Olympiad to China, and they brought a bronze. And they were the only kids from public school. So all the other kids were from very elite private schools, after-school programs. Many of them were trained by university professors for an entire year, etc. And our kids went there. None of them have traveled abroad ever. I think only one of the kids was in Georgia once for vacation. So like these are kids from region who haven't been really exposed to the world, aside from whatever we have, like how much we have tried to bring the world to them. Very shy, very modest, but very smart boys. And they brought a bronze to Armenia. And this was also like for us, now this is really working. This is, something that these kids from public school can go to competitive environment where it's sharks against sharks, and they can bring a bronze.
So what were they competing in?
The AI particularly. So
But
it was
like,
an
what
AI
was the
Olympiad. So they
process
had
of
two
competition?
things. One was a group challenge, and it was actually robotics and AI. So basically they had different types of robots. They had to write a code and make the robot do X things. And then the second one was individual. So they were tasked like almost the entire day. They were coding basically to try to crack the task that they were given. And it was a very, very competitive, rigid, like Olympiad. I mean, Olympiad is not just regular competition. It is what it is. And AI Olympiads are new, so it's relevant 2-3 years that they are doing globally. So they're still, and it's multidisciplinary. So it was really interesting to see them succeed. One thing that was also really interesting, so the group challenge was optional for the new teams, because there were teams that were coming back for second time, but for the new teams it was optional. They didn't have to compete, but our team and our project lead was also with them. They said, why not, we're gonna try it. And they, out of 88 teams, they were the 16th, although they didn't even sort of they shouldn't have even tried to do it as newbies in a sense, because, and none of the new teams I think tried except for them. But that's also very interesting, because it was something that also included robotics elements, which we don't teach them. But they were able to, with their knowledge of physics and mathematics, they were able to solve it. And I think it's partially because for 2 years they were doing a lot of project-based learning, a lot of challenges, a lot of real life sort of things. So I think their brain in a way was trained for the unknown challenge that they could take, which is really interesting. That's what life is, right? You can't really plan on everything.
So how do you kind of see Armenia on the global stage in AI in the next 10 years? Like, what's your mission, and what are you preparing for?
So our big vision is that Armenia has to really focus on educating AI innovators. So we have to bet on the creator type, and enable as many creators as possible. Obviously, on that way, we're going to also be educating a lot of highly capable employees for the big tech and the startup ecosystem. But we think that if we bet on the AI creator type, we're going to both get a lot of innovators, founders, new technologies created for the country and the world. And also, we're going to obviously on the way educate a lot of highly capable workforce. All of that has a big impact on economy, because all of that means, highly capable workforce, which means a lot of opportunity for business investment, etc. So economically, that's going to be, I think, impactful. Second important thing is that we think that, we plan on also supporting some of their learning journeys in higher education, and we do want to go back to what we were originally doing in terms of supporting AI research and AI startups in the country in terms of enabling environment. So once we start pushing the quantity and quality of the talent, then we can go back and say, okay, now we need to strengthen some AI research centers. We need to bring in great professors that would be able to teach, more advanced stuff in the university level. And then that all will naturally spill over into the companies like NVIDIA, for example, or Adobe, which are already present in Armenia, to do more R&D, because they will know that there is really top talent, great professors who are already there, and it's also manageable in the sense that you can do some projections. Okay, I know every year 1,000 kids from the regions are coming from school to university, and then every year from bachelor I'm gonna get 300 highly capable people. That means that I can plan my business to expand the R&D, and that brings different type of money to the country. And because we also work with the government very closely, the government is now in workings with high-tech strategy. They have big reforms in higher education. So we try to synchronize what we're doing with all of those things to make sure that what we do builds future-proof system in terms of education and directly fuels the innovation strategy of the country, basically. I think what's also very important, that even if, let's say, AI is a bubble, it bursts, for example, it's not a thing, and there's another technology that appears. Even if we take the worst case scenario, what we do on a system level will produce highly capable students with strong mathematics foundations, with strong computer science foundations, with innovation mindset, with problem solvers mindset, and with global thinking, who will definitely be the first adopters and potentially the creators of that potential disruption. So we are in net positive outcome, even if in the worst case scenario, let's say AI wasn't the field that we should have bet on, because what we do, the way we do, is not, let's use ChatGPT. It's let's understand how technologies are built. So these kids will be able to pivot whatever happens in the future.
So once they graduate high school, are you able to foster their kind of next steps and actually them becoming a part of the workforce? Or
so currently we engage in industry, first of all, into what we're doing in the following way. We engage them in career guidance. We do AI camps. They do like speed dating with the people who work in the business, try to do things like that for them to see a lot of different types of application fields and types of career paths that they can have, because AI is an application technology. So like it can be in banking, it can be in healthcare, it can be in aerospace. Like there's so many places you can apply it, right? So we want them to meet the industry that does different things. The second thing we do is in the end of their senior year, they have to do like a big capstone project. So we collect from the business challenges and real life projects that they work on, and then they together with their AI teacher basically try to work on an actual project that some of those industries are doing, or a real market challenge that they try to solve. That gives them an understanding where reality is in the sector, and it also gives an opportunity for the industry industry to observe them and see who is who, what is what are the most promising students. And we already see that the students are of different types. Some of them are a little bit more entrepreneurial. They're already thinking, oh, this could be product. The other ones are more like research oriented, really digging into the algorithm, etc., which is also very important because both types, for example, have environment to grow within this program. The second thing we do is we started now to work on the developments of the undergrad program. So we want to make sure that we ensure their smooth continuation into higher education. So we have hired an expert team, as we did for high school, that is now trying to understand what would be the ideal learning path for the students on the next level. So what type of subjects they have to take, why, with what sequence, what types of other things they have to do aside from computer science and mathematics to become that innovator. And now we are also in workings with the local universities to understand how we are going to embed some of that into their undergrad programs so that they don't stop their learning curve. And in the undergrad program, they will have to work with the industry as well, because one of the things we worked with the government to make some amendments to the new law. The country is now undergoing big reforms in higher education and education. So some of the things are, for example, internships and apprenticeships and industrial projects that they can do while they study. So instead of the business coming and saying, you know what, you don't need the university education, let's come and work with us, which is very common. We try to combine those two. What do we do so that they both get the depth of education they need to in university, and it's not theoretical, but it's foundational. And how do we make sure that the industry can start working with them on some real industry projects so that they have smooth transition to workforce once they graduate. And it's a win-win because the businesses do need the capabilities and they cannot become universities. As much as they try to do training programs, the business can't be a university. And then vice versa, the university can never give the real life experience that the business can. So we are trying to embed that into their undergraduate program. And we are not going to invent a wheel. Many frameworks exist globally on how you can do this, but we'll make sure that Armenia does it in the smart way. And we have enough big business in Armenia to be able to do it. And I think that means that once they graduate, they will right away be ready to work in the company, and they will already have sort of like the internship experience. So neither the company nor the student will need to spend the time on trying to understand how to do soft landing into the company.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Before we continue, let's take a quick moment to chat with this episode's sponsor, personal injury attorney and founder of AN Law, Ani Nalbandian. Have you ever had a client who messed up their case without realizing it?
Yes. I've had a client who the insurance company likes to play games. They like to call the client and ask them questions and pretend that they didn't see the representation letter on file. I had a client that actually spoke to them, gave a full statement to the insurance company, and completely ruined their case.
I've heard that posting on Instagram can actually hurt your case.
Absolutely.
I've read that people actually get in trouble with gym selfies too. Like, it seems so innocent, but they go to the gym, they take selfies working out, and then they claim to be injured. And
well, it does make sense. If you're injured, you should not be at the gym doing reps or lifting heavy weights. But, people do that, and actually it really hurts their case.
Make sure to visit anlaw.law for more info. That's anlaw.law. So the CEO of Tumo was here, and she was discussing how Tumo is a franchise model. Yeah. And I thought that was so interesting because I never thought of education in franchising terms. So is this something that you do?
So we don't franchise just because the way our structures is to work with public university systems. So what we do is also policy reform and system change and these types of things. However, we had so many Armenian schools and non-Armenian schools asking us, can you help us do something like this in our school as well, that we are now developing a model to understand how we can help export some of what we do and embed into the schools abroad as well.
I thought it was so fascinating that
It is.
Japan wanted to
I know.
use Armenia's software. I mean,
I
it's
know.
really an
I know.
amazing opportunity. So
I agree, and I think so. We have created this coalition. It's called 405 Educational Coalition, which was co-created by FAST Foundation, by TUMO, by AGBU, AMAA, AEF, and IB Foundation, and I'm missing out on someone. I don't remember. Oh, the Teach for Armenia. So there are 7 all diaspora created entities that all do amazing work in the space of education in Armenia and bigger Armenian world. So for Armenians. But we decided that we want to merge efforts because all of us have different types of niches and expertise, etc., to try to make Armenia both like a hub for really competitive education and then potentially start exporting Armenian educational model globally, because we indeed are a very interesting space for experimentation when it comes to learning, because for many reasons, historically, learning was part of our survival. So you don't have to convince a parent in Armenia that it's important that kids are educated, which is not actually something that every nation has. There are many regions in the world where nations don't see the value in education, and that is true. So it is, in a way, a competitive advantage. And plus, because we have limited resources, we are extremely creative on how we're trying to solve the problem.
we have to be.
Exactly. So when, for example, many foreigners come to Armenia, they're amazed with the amount of really creative educational programs in tiny 3 million populated Armenia. They're like, do you understand how much concentration of education innovation you have? It's pretty fascinating. And because we have so much expertise amongst ourselves, within these 7 entities, we have network. So we decided that we have to merge the efforts to first start to help Armenia strengthen its education system now at large, and then start creating products that could be, as a rule, exported from Armenia. And I definitely think we have big potential on doing more of what we do and exporting that to the world, because what we do, for example, with Generation AI is now competing with with what China is doing, and with what some U.S. school districts are doing, but only some school districts, and it definitely can become a trademark program for Armenia. And one of the reasons we can afford it actually is because we're tiny. It's cheaper, if I can put that word into it, for us to do such programs because we're small, and we have a buy-in from many players. We have motivated students and parents. Once you give an educational opportunity, the entire family is doing everything possible to help the kids succeed. So, which is very important. Like, even the parents that don't really understand the contents of it, but they see that this is going to give a chance to the kid, they do everything and beyond to help the kids succeed, which is, I think, a very, very beautiful thing in that sense. And I think Armenia has big potential in terms of creating those types of educational products that could be exported.
What are the biggest challenges
in Armenia?
In your efforts to become the central AI hub?
Scalability is a problem, always. I think in that sense, we need a bit more time to scale things. Although we are ambitiously moving fast, and we're already scaling the program. Although we started only 3 years ago, we already have 1,000 students. Next year we will have 2,000 students, and there are many things aligning now in the country around this as well. But it's still, education reform still requires time, even if you're super aggressive about it. At least 10 years is this life cycle of a change. So time and scalability usually are the 2 challenges. The second one, I would say, is the mindset. that we have. Sometimes I think the challenge is that some people don't believe in the future. They won't say it that way. They might not even realize that, but it's the subconscious sort of barrier. When you say, in 10 years, or with this, in 10 years, they're like, 10 what?
Is it because of the 2020 war and how they've been affected emotionally and mentally by that? Or is it more of a cultural not being farsighted kind of thing?
I think it's generational trauma. In terms of, in general, what type of history we have seen. And I also think it's the narrative that follows all that. I think we need to have the courage to start changing the narrative. Because I think and I'm saying this as someone who grew up in Armenia, and we are considered the generation of independence because we were born in the 1990 or 1991 when Soviet Union was collapsed, and we were already raised in the independent Armenia, where we can consider ourselves active citizens of our country, but still the mentality of let's play on the safe side, let's plan short term, etc. All of that is there, because also the victimhood narrative never vanished. I think we need to change that, because one of the problems we have is if you don't plan long term, there's no way you are prepared for the long term, right? So we need to break that cycle. The way I found a solution to it is through enabling children on time, because while they are moldable and they're like, teenagers are in this vulnerable age where they are trying to break free from the narratives that they were given, and it's a very biological process for them, right? They need to have an alternative narrative given to them. And I think the alternative narrative is you can do whatever you want, you can create anything you want in Armenia, and you just have to have the desire to do it. There is enough people who would want to help you to do it. And why wouldn't you do it? That's, instead of saying, it's risky, don't, kespetka, all of those things.
I'm sure it's probably also really challenging. I can only imagine the impact with one of your founders of the FAST organization being currently held in Azerbaijan.
Yes, I definitely agree. And it's heartbreaking, because you also can't avoid thinking, oh my God, if someone as smart, as powerful, as connected as Ruben has the fate that he has now, which is the most unfair thing that could happen, and you sort of feel useless because it seems there's nothing you can do to try to overcome that. But I think despair is something that is the most dangerous thing that we can give to these kids, because life is going to hit them in any case. It's like a parent trying to protect the child from everything. You can't. So you have to give them the toolkit to still have those big dreams about humanity and belief in humanity, belief in the good, the toolkit to be able to be prepared for any type of bad that might happen, because it will, in this or that form, right? And the resilience to be able to create something despite all of those things. I think if we were to change some of these things into a different realm, that we as Armenians have historically been creators, because we were able to create something out of nothing. There is something absolutely unlogical in the fact that we as nations still exist. And part of that is because of that. We have communication skill, we're resilient, we're adaptable, we're able to create something out of nothing, we're able to understand others in the sense that we can try to be creative, innovative, right? On how to survive. Okay, so the question is, how do we pivot the skill that helped us survive into being the tool for us to thrive? And this is something that you can put into a teenager's brain without doing all the historical aspect of things. Just like try to take this and thrive. Don't survive. Don't just play slow and safe. No. Don't also be too risky, because yes, you have to plan it. But being entrepreneurial doesn't mean being unrational. It's calculated risk. So calculate the risk, try it. And
again, your foundation with math. So
yeah,
yeah,
exactly. I think they have all the chances. It's easy to be disappointed in things. It's much harder to be motivated with things. So we need to give them more space to be motivated. Life will disappoint them without us,
That was such a good quote. I can't remember what exactly it was, but it was something like, I choose to be an optimist because the opposite, it's basically just like a dead end. It sucks anyway, so you might as well be,
I fully agree with that. Yeah, it's very depressing not to be an optimist, and I say that as a
is.
chronic optimist.
Yeah. No, I think I do think in some capacity it's a choice that you have to make. Because it really is true. When you believe in something, you actually take proactive steps in trying to achieve it. If you're a pessimist and you put in your mind that it's not going to work out, or that you don't need to think beyond the decade or whatever it is, you're not prepared and you don't take the steps, and then it really won't work out. There's no way for it to work out if you're not taking the proactive steps to make it happen.
I agree. I also think it's important to teach them that no one really knows. I think sometimes, especially in small countries, you have this illusion that, in the big world, in these people, they know, and we are not exposed to the information. Most likely we don't. And it's not like that. Like there are a lot of myths around it.
And a lot of intangibles that you don't know how they actually can completely tip the scales.
Exactly. There are a lot of myths around it. So
yeah.
I think the more they travel, the more people they see, the more stories, the more times they try and fail and try and succeed. I think sometimes, people think, oh my God, this is going to so hard. It's impossible to do. And then someone does it and they're like, oh, so it was possible. When we were starting Generation AI, everyone was saying there is no way you are going to be able to do something like this with the ministry in the public school systems in Armenia. And I understand why they were saying this, but that's exactly what fascinated me, because I was like, okay, I can at least try and know that it is impossible, rather than not try and maybe it was possible. And
so why was it thought to be impossible?
Because it's bureaucracy, it's a lot of policy change, it's also working with enormous amount of societal mentality, challenges, because you're really entering the lives of families in all regions, and there are so many layers to this. Plus it's teachers, everyone is very skeptical about the teachers' capacity in general and in Armenia as well, and how sustainable this can be. Can you really bring the globally competitive AI content to Armenia? Like, why do you think you can do that? Even US doesn't do it. Like back in the days when we were starting, no country was doing it. And one of the biggest criticism, except for China, one of the biggest criticisms we were getting, well, why do you think you are so smart? You're going to be able to do this if no one else is doing it. And I was saying, yeah, maybe we're just reacting faster, or maybe it's more realistic for us to do because we're small, and because we don't have much to lose as a system. There's the system is so broken that there's so much you need to do with it, but there's also less resistance. Like in USA, for at least 20 years now, math education and in general school education is in very bad shape, like during international exams, etc. Like the level of math, language, it's really bad, but no one can really truly touch it because it's highly political. Every president is saying, the education policy, I will do this and that, right? And it's extremely expensive. And it involves entire society, like all of the society is impacted, and USA is huge, right? So this change management is is such a behemoth, like almost no one wants to touch it.
Yeah.
And in Armenia, it's like tiny. It's really tiny. And the system has been outdated for a long time. So it's easier to make change because the system isn't that rigid. The institutions are not that strong for you not to be able to bring change if you know how systems work. So that's why it's important for you to know how that bureaucracy works and how you could make it work, or what is the realistic way to shape it. But we have currently a minister that is courageous enough to speak about the problems and courageous enough to allow partnerships that will shape up and shake up a little bit the reality of the system, which is a very important enabler. And then we have entities like FAST that can bring the diaspora's entire knowledge and experience. Like one of our advisors is Alice Petrosian, who led California education districts for years. She knows how U.S. system works and it doesn't work, and she knows everyone literally in the sector. Or we have Mary Papazian, who is leading the governors union of all universities in USA. She is highly reputable in the sector, and she's one of our advisors. So imagine us bringing that knowledge of people who worked with millions of people, hundreds, thousands of students, and we tell them, can you help us do this tiny little change in Armenia? Of course, you can leverage that resources. The size is really small. That's why it's so interesting. I always joke that if we have the collective will, actually in 5 years, I think we can make Armenia a completely different place just because it's small.
Yeah, no, that's really... It's interesting that from this perspective, it's actually a strength.
It's a big advantage.
Yeah.
It's truly a big advantage because it's cost efficient as well.
Yeah. Well, then it's interesting how I feel like public consciousness has changed in a way where people are more now about entrepreneurship and influence than maybe before COVID. Even it's a very recent kind of shift in public consciousness where people don't really want to follow the traditional systems anymore, join the traditional workforce, because they understood kind of the concept of freedom in a different way.
I think so. I think also, we have to understand that the digital exposure to information did do a big thing for the society, because it sort of opened up the world. Like for my generation, it was books and then dial-up internet. And then we got to travel a little. And as much as we traveled, that opened up sort of our understanding of the world. For my kids, my daughter is 11. She understands the world better than I understood in I don't know, 18, just because of the content she's exposed to, even the cartoons. And I'm not even saying all the documentary, all the different materials, gamified, really cool stuff that generation now is exposed to. It's just completely different. She analyzes life the way we could do much later, just because the information we were exposed to was different. So I think in that sense, the youth comes with much wider understanding of the world. However, they also have many anxieties because of the digital, right? So we need to make real life cooler for them. That's the challenge of today's youth. Yeah. Like, how do you make the real life cooler for them?
Playing outside,
I know,
cooler.
Instead of this, right?
Yeah.
And it's challenging. But I do think if you create the environment for them to test and be curious, because school kills curiosity. Like there's so much research that shows kids are naturally creative, they are curious, they want to touch and try and experiment, be entrepreneurial. Like being a kid is being an entrepreneurial. Yeah. And then you put them
year by year, you kill it in them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the idea is, how do you make sure that we don't kill it till the end, and we vice versa. Like while they have that rebellion age to try to break free from systems, how do you make the system a place where they can actually open up and be entrepreneurial, be experiment? It doesn't mean they have to become business people. It means they have to think creatively.
To foster creativity. I hated school so much. And now, you know, there was a period that I was so happy to be done with it. You know, you wait, you're like, oh, I just have one more year and then I'm done. And then you're finally done. And then you have nightmares about it, about like having exams again that you didn't prepare for or whatever. And then finally you're done with the nightmares, maybe. And then now with a kid in school, I feel like I'm actually reliving the trauma because I'm like, why is he having to experience all of this, you know?
I hear you.
Yeah, I think that's why it's been interesting for me to cover these different approaches to education on the podcast because I personally feel a need for it. And I think it's really great what you guys are doing.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree. Being a mom today is very challenging. I have an 11-year-old and an 8-year-old, and it's tricky because, like, on one hand, like, to be fair to the Armenian system, they are doing a lot of reforms now, and some of the new textbooks and curricula they produce, they are actually quite good. Like, there's a lot of interactive stuff. There's a lot of critical thinking that you have to put into it. Then the problem is that now the teachers, like, okay, we have now formally a really nice curricula, pretty cool textbooks, but who is teaching? And then you're like, oh, okay. You know, some of them are really great and some of them are just really old school, and it doesn't matter what textbook you put in front of them. So that will take, again, obviously a lot of generational change.
Yeah.
But the way kids also learn and respond to teachers also changed. Like, we were so hierarchical. Like, it was the teacher, you know, there was no way you could, you know,
go against
argue,
authority.
go against the hierarchy, etc.
Yeah.
But now the kids actually think differently. Even in the old school system, basically, they still the teacher's role is really different in that sense, and it is becoming actually quite difficult, I think, for the teachers because they don't know what to do with these kids, and that's why, for example, with the math that we were teaching, it was pretty interesting. We had many middle-aged teachers, like 50 to 60, really good mathematicians. But they were educated in Soviet times, so they know the old school, really efficient, by the way, math teaching of Soviet methodology. But that has nothing to do with, like, the active learning. Like, they just don't know what it means to do active learning with mathematics. So we had a ton of experts develop the teacher manuals on how you do active learning. We, like, publish these types of manuals for them. And then we do a lot of training and supervision and mentoring for them. We had teachers in the first year, they were like, oh my God, how am I going to do this project-based learning? I have no idea how to teach math in a project setting. What do you mean project setting for math? And now they're in third year and they're like, how did I teach mathematics for 20 years without this? And it's so beautiful that a teacher that is working for 20-something years has the ability to learn and actually get really enthusiastic about it, and now do a different wave of teaching. So that also proves the point that actually we have to give more attention to the teachers. They love their job. Those that stayed in the system are either really bad or they truly love their job. So what if we give them a little bit, you know, support? And we definitely see magic with us giving support to teachers. They do magic, literally. And those are regular teachers from regular schools on pretty regular salary. And all we do is give them some supervision, good methodology, and we elevate their role. We just tell them that they are important. The parents tell that they're important. We give them recognition. We change the perception of a teacher for a student. And it has all the impact you would imagine it should have. And it doesn't cost anything. Like, this bit is $0 with big impact. So it goes a long way. I think we have to rethink how we definitely organize learning, but I also don't think that we should close all schools and all of that. We just have to rethink how schools have to work. Back in the days, school and the teacher was the only source of information. Now it's completely different. So that should be a source of experimentation. Okay, I have all this information.
Yeah.
What do I do with it? And that's what the school has to give. So it's a completely different...
Yeah, the system has to evolve with the times.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being here.
Likewise, thank you for having me.
This was very interesting, and it's very exciting that a small country can actually take leadership in such an important aspect of all of our lives.
That's true. I have high hopes about what we can do in small Armenia, so thank you for having me.
A huge thanks to Torpedo Comics and Essentia Beauty Spa for helping to make this podcast possible. You've probably seen Torpedo Comics in your local malls, but you can also visit them online at torpedocomics.com for an amazing selection of comics and collectibles. As for Essentia Beauty Spa, their beauty experts are truly unparalleled. I trust Diana, the founder, with all of my hair needs. She's simply the best. For more information, visit essentiabeautyspa.com. If you enjoyed this episode and you want to help us grow, all you need to do is subscribe to our channel and drop a comment.